Hey, what is going on, you guys? My name is Rage, and we are actually back today with an overall review of Baby Apocalypse, but more specifically, whether or not he is actually required in Dark Dimension 6, guys. Because I know there's been a lot of content and obviously a lot of advice going around about, whether or not you do need Big Apocalypse or Baby Apocalypse to get through Dark Dimension 6. Although I do agree, it's really going to depend on your account and again your priorities as well. But Baby Apocalypse and Big Apocalypse are completely two different characters. I can't even speak from experience, but I know from just watching content creators, reviewing the kits, seeing him actually come alive. It's a completely different experience if you do have the fully unlocked. Having said that, having a fully unlocked Apocalypse is also 23 characters that you may not be ready to invest in. So, I have the receipts. I'm probably one of the few content creators that have actually been able to get the entire global section done with Baby Apocalypse. So, figured I'd share that insight and give you guys feedback. But as well, this video is not meant to argue for or against. If I had the choice, 100% I would bring in Big Apocalypse. But hoping this video at least sheds some light that it's not impossible and that you do have options, and it really ultimately depends on what your goals are. So, having said that, guys, let's get right to it. Again, I have the receipts, I have all the attacks and history, so that's kind of what I'm hoping to do with you guys today, so that you can actually see, how we did for the first 5 nodes. And again, the first 5 nodes, because the first 2 does not require any traits, and then the last 3 are global. So you can see in my first node, it is going to be more dependent on what team you bring in, but I fortunately did have access to building up Val ASAP. I wanted to bring in Val because of the Mystic Gear, and it was quite an investment, but we know that Val is going to be utilized later for the Cosmic sections anyway, so not a big deal. But you can see Apocalypse, Val, Black Widow, Captain America, and Kang. The combination of those 5, where we were able to get the first node done in 6 attacks, which, in my honest opinion, is pretty average. Like, I think even with a Big Apocalypse, you probably would have been close to 4 or 5 attacks. So is it a big difference? Not really in the first node. Let's move on now to the second node. Even better. I think this one was easier than the first node because the enemies were more reasonable. But you can see here, again, 4 attacks, very, very reasonable. And again, keep in mind that context that we're just using a Baby Apocalypse. And the nice thing about the Dark Dimension 6 that we didn't know beforehand was that his cooldowns do reset every time he falls. So I don't know if that was an intended design of the game, but that was something we overlooked. And now that we know that, that gives him more value, right? You don't need to build up 1,000,000 energy for him to utilize his ultimate and special. You actually get it with each time he actually falls. Absolutely huge. Now, things start getting a little interesting because the global section is honestly probably the hardest section in the Dark Dimension 6. And to be honest, I've been through all the Dark Dimensions, and I gotta say, it was definitely one of the hardest Dark Dimension sections I've ever done. But maybe it was just the mix of my team. But that's kind of why I want to talk about it more, right? So Mission 3, the non-global, I had to change up my roster because of the fact that we need global only. So we lose Val, we lose Kang. When we start kind of taking a look at, how they actually do with Baby Apocalypse without having that revive now. You can see, still not terrible. Even in Mission 3, 6 attacks. Mind you, Captain Carter bringing back my Captain America was almost kind of like a pseudo Val, but Nemesis having that sustain, the amount of damage he can do, the bleed, the slows, I think that was a big difference maker. And as you can see, 6 attacks in my eyes is still very, very, very reasonable, especially for, like I said, arguably one of the hardest sections in the game. And one of the hardest areas of Dark Dimension that we've ever seen. The multitude of enemies. 6 attacks is super reasonable, and you can set it up in the sense that most will have their cooldowns ready for the next node. Now things start getting quite ugly here. Oh, sorry, jumped ahead. In the sense that these 2 nodes are arguably probably the hardest nodes of Dark Dimension 6. Maybe the Cosmic sections can battle that as well. But you can see with this next node, my goodness, if you follow along my videos, it was an absolute slugfest. Like we can only target maybe 1 enemy per time we attack. But the thing is that here, it's too bad it doesn't show all the history, but you can see with each and every attack I did, we were making some meaningful progress. Even with an enemy taking down 20-30 million, there wasn't any attacks in my Mission 4 where I didn't utilize Apocalypse's ultimate. Even though he was in his baby form, you need a turn to build up and then use his ult, right? It wasn't the case for that. 13 attacks for one of the hardest nodes I've ever experienced in Dark Dimension. You know, like if you had a big apocalypse, perhaps it could have been done in maybe 6 or 7 attacks, maybe less, maybe more closer to that average of 13 that I have here. But at the end of the day, that's the question you guys have to ask yourself: is that rather than waiting, you know, 4 or 5 more attacks on a certain node, are you willing to compromise building up 23 characters just so that you can do that? And then let's not forget the T2 ISO Blue 5, right? Something that folks may or may not have access to. That is also a difference maker in consideration here. So in my eyes, I've never not had a day where it didn't attack. It just felt smooth. My Dark Dimension 6 downtime has been exceptionally low. I think the only time was actually in between when I started the any traits and starting global is kind of when I was waiting for mutant gear from Nemesis. That was the only time I basically paused. After I was done global, I headed straight into cosmic. So just trying to illustrate that because of the savings that we've had from Baby Apocalypse, we've been able to keep this train going. And that's exactly what we've been doing and maintaining. And again, it just results in additional attacks. Last but not least, I felt like Mission 5 was much better. The results here don't show that because it's only two less attacks than Mission 4, but it just felt like an easier node. Like everybody was doing work. I think the only time was there was a couple attacks where I had to, again, similar to the previous node, target 1 or 2 enemies at a time because, but you'll see what I mean. Like there's a mix of all these Hellas, these zombie Iron Mans, Wakandans, and then as well as Unlimited X-Men were here. It was just such a nasty node, and we got the job done. We grinded through, we battled, but we got the job done, right? And that's what I mean, guys. I think realistically, even with Big Apocalypse, this probably would have been a 5-6 attack. So basically save 4 or 5 attacks, and it's less than 4 or 5 days, because if you guys do use the refreshes or use power cores, even the 50s I typically use here and there, you're gonna be fine. You know, honestly, you got through it, and at the end of the day, when we got through it, an amazing feeling, because we were able to do it with Baby Apocalypse, and knowing that we didn't have to invest in 23 characters yet. Not saying I'm not going for Big Apocalypse, but I know for sure the biggest reason for myself was the fact that I knew it would have stunted and halted me a lot more. I got into Dark Dimension 6 a lot earlier than actually some of even the big name content creators, because of the fact that I didn't have to invest in Big Apocalypse. And I think that's a huge missed message that we're not seeing here, right? The difference between the Big Apocalypse and Baby Apocalypse is night and day, but how much are you willing to compromise on your gear over waiting, you know, and starting Dark Dimension 6? For me personally, I just wanted to make an attempt a day, so that was kind of my logic. But as well, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't actually have gear for all 23 characters right now in the game. I'm free to play, so because of that resource management mindset and me having to plan ahead, I just wouldn't have been able to do that. I don't have the gear to bring all my horsemen right now. Most of them are gear tier 16. The only exception is Darkhold, because I was able to make a video guide on the Apocalypse stage for the respective Darkhold team. But other than that, everybody's gear tier 16. And then the obvious one, obviously, here is Nemesis, because I actually did bring him in the Dark Dimension 6, so he's going to get love and resolve from that. But everybody else, yeah, gear tier 16. They've been doing fine. But again, guys, reflect your materials and resources. If you have, don't get me wrong, if you guys have all the resources to bring in Big Apocalypse and start Dark Dimension 6 shortly afterwards, yeah, by all means, I think it's a great idea. But I did the math, it just wouldn't have worked out for myself, and that's my logic. But the cool thing was that we saw that in global and in the any trade section. It's not impossible bringing in Baby Apocalypse, so I want to give a shout out to him as well. It's gonna be interesting. I don't know how I feel yet about the legendary section yet with Apocalypse. I may at that point, it's gonna be some time before I start that for sure, so maybe by then I'll have enough materials and resources. But I'm also intrigued on whether I should just finish all of Dark Dimension 6 with Baby Apocalypse, so that way we do have some sort of reference of the difference here, right? But keep in mind, guys, the one last disclaimer I wanted to make for my global section was that I feel like, yes, Baby Apocalypse was partially the reason I had more than 10 attacks for those last 2 nodes, but I think another big reason that we're forgetting is that I could have used a better team, honestly. If I had characters like Quicksilver into that mix, like you can see here, my Quicksilver is quite on the bottom here. I haven't built him up. If I had characters like Quicksilver, Doctor Doom, I definitely wouldn't have had that many attacks, 100%. I just knew that my team lacked damage, but we were still able to truck through it, and that's the other mixed message here too, right? It's yes, Baby Apocalypse versus Big Apocalypse is going to be a difference maker, but ultimately it's also going to depend on your team that you surround Apocalypse with. And that's the biggest thing, honestly, and that's ultimately going to go into that resource management mindset. Once again, that's my video for today, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. You think I should or shouldn't finish the rest of Dark Dimension 6 with Baby Apocalypse? But yeah, I hope this at least dispels any rumors or myths that you can't have Baby Apocalypse in Dark Dimension 6. It's definitely feasible, definitely possible. You just need to be patient, and it's gonna likely take more attacks. But at the end of the day, Dark Dimension 6 is a marathon, not a sprint. So thank you as always, guys. If you appreciate checking my videos, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.